The world of analog music equipment is colossal, in fact much bigger than the digital music world because it has been around for a lot longer. Many people who work with music claim that analog equipment generates a better sound. Others say that digital is better. However, I think it's just a matter of opinion. Today I'm going to be looking into the history of the analog synthesizer. The telharmonium, also known as the dimaphone, is the earliest electronic musical instrument known. Developed by Thaddeus Cahal in 1897, the electrical signal from the telharmonium was transmitted over wires. It was heard on the receiving end by means of horn speakers. Like the later Hammond organ, the telharmonium used tone wheels to generate musical sounds as electrical signals by additive synthesis. This is what it sounded like. The telharmonium foreshadowed modern electronic musical equipment in a number of ways. For instance, its sound output came in the form of connecting ordinary telephone receivers to large paper cones, a primitive form of loudspeaker. This was the first known step into electronic music. However, it did not make a massive impact on the electronic music world. 31 years after the telharmonium, the theremin was created. The theremin is an early electronic musical instrument controlled without contact from the player. It is named after its Russian inventor, Professor Leon Theremin, who patented the device in 1928. The controlling section usually consists of two metal antennas, which sense the position of the player's hands, and control oscillators for frequency with one hand and amplitude, volume, with the other, so it can be played without being touched. The electrical signals from the theremin are amplified and sent to a loudspeaker. It is obvious that after the theremin, many inventors were inspired to create more electronic instruments. From this time on, the world of music would change as we know it. In Berlin, during the 1930s, Friedrich Trautwein and Oskar Sala worked on the Trautonium, an instrument that was played by pressing a steel wire onto a bar. Depending on the player's preference, it enabled infinitely variable pitches, much like a fretless stringed instrument. The first Trautoniums were marketed by Telefunken from 1932 to 1935. Only 100 were made. Although the Trautonium isn't very well known, it is the first known real synthesizer. Sala continued to develop the instrument throughout his life, an effort culminating in the two-voice Mixter Trautonium in 1952. He scored numerous films, as well as the entire soundtrack of Alfred Hitchcock's film The Birds with this instrument. Although the movie does not feature a conventional musical soundtrack, all bird calls and the sound of beating wings heard in the movie were generated on the Mixter Trautonium. The Novacord is considered by many to be the world's first commercial polyphonic synthesizer. Using subtractive synthesis and manufactured by the Hammond Company, it was designed by John Hannett, Lawrence Hammond, and C.N. Williams. Only some 1,069 examples were built over a period from 1939 to 1942. It was one of the very few electronic products released by Hammond that was not intended to emulate the sound of an organ. Although there were a few other electronic instruments coming out at this time, such as the mellotron, I decided not to go into detail with them as they aren't actually synthesizers. The Moog synthesizer was one of the first widely used electronic musical instruments. Early developmental work on the components of the synthesizer occurred at the Columbia Princeton Electronic Music Center, now the Computer Music Center. While there, Robert Moog developed the voltage-controlled oscillators. ADSR envelope generators, and other synthesizer modules with composer Herbert Dutch. Moog created the first voltage-controlled subtractive synthesizer to utilize a keyboard as a controller. In 1966, Moog filed a patent application for his unique low-pass filter in 1969. Unlike previous modular synthesizers, the Mini Moog was highly simplified and was much easier to manufacture. Thus, the Mini Moog was cheaper and easier to use, which in turn allowed all musicians and artists to enjoy the synthesizer. After the Mini Moog, the idea of a synthesizer was changed completely in the music world and became a general instrument to be used by musicians and bands. It is highly important that we look back on this history to see what created this magnificent instrument, as today we have an abundance of free computer software that emulates the synthesizer.